I speak to you in the name of God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Happy often had this huge, nearly toothless smile on his face, and that's how he got his nickname. When I was growing up, my grandparents owned a country store and gas station in the small town of Raymer, Alabama, and Happy was their closest neighbor. Happy looked a lot more like a farmer or a migrant worker than pretty much anything else I can imagine. He had calluses on his hands, those really deep, thick ones that are never going anywhere. And his skin was damaged by a bit too much sun exposure. And he always had that big old grin. He would tell me, "Not enough teeth for dentures." That's what he said. Happy was a fixture at the store. He was never employed by my grandparents. He was more like a member of the family. And in most of my memories of the store, Happy was on the front porch selling whatever produce he and my grandfather had grown in the garden. Happy always lent a helping hand, either in the garden or helping feed the animals, or he'd help my grandmother, Gran, in the store when things got busy. He always looked out for Gran, especially when my grandfather went away. When he went out of town, Happy was just around the corner, and he kept her safe. Happy was not like the hired hands, the boys, as my grandfather called them, who he would hire once or twice, and then they'd move on to the big city of Montgomery, leaving my grandfather behind. Happy was always there, dependable and faithful. I remember my grandmother inviting Happy to many meals, to feeding him, giving him baked goods. Lord knows they probably gave him money anytime he would accept it. And I also know that Happy could not have been the saint he was in my childhood memories, because he was my grandfather's drinking buddy. Now, shepherds were likely not the idyllic shepherds of our imagination, or the sweet, adorable ones we see in Christmas pageants. Shepherds were hard workers, and their work was risky and dangerous. Shepherds were rough around the edges. They were not polite society type people. So when Jesus says, "I am the good shepherd," he means something much different than what our modern ears hear. Jesus meant he was a lot more like Happy than he was like me. Jesus told the disciples that he was more like a common person who works in the field. He was like someone they knew who took up risky and dangerous work. He was like a working farmer or migrant worker. Today's gospel lesson is about Jesus as the Good Shepherd. And this lesson is a lot more about Jesus as the Good Shepherd than it is about us as the sheep. Jesus is not like the hired hands who disappear when going gets tough. Jesus is there with the flock, even to the point of laying down his life for the sheep. Jesus cares for the sheep when the going gets tough, and Jesus protects them to the point of laying down his life for them. Jesus is our Good Shepherd. Now, my grandparents really depended on Happy. Happy cared for them and their family as if we were his own. And I know this for sure. Jesus, our Good Shepherd, cares for us so much more than Happy cared for my family. Jesus knows us each by name. Jesus protects us and cares for us. Jesus knows us personally, and Jesus cares for us personally. Like Happy, who knew everyone sitting on that front porch in small town Raymer, he was always catching up with people and hearing what was going on, checking on them and asking about their family. Jesus cares for us by name even more than Happy cared for the people of Raymer. So here's the question I want us to focus on today. How often do we really depend on God the way sheep depend on a shepherd? Yes, of course, we are faithful. Yes, we say our prayers. But how often do we put our whole entire trust in God's love and grace? How often do we depend on Jesus the way sheep depend on a shepherd, the way my grandparents depended on Happy? This Good Shepherd Sunday, I want to remind us to actually depend on Jesus. We all have things that are going on in our lives. Some are exciting, some are stressful, some are heartbreaking. Please, take whatever is on your heart to God. Tell God the truth, because Lord knows God has heard it all, and you can't really offend God by telling God what is really going on in your life. So please, hand things over. Hand things over to Jesus, our Good Shepherd, and ask for help. Ask for guidance. And then listen. Stay there a moment and listen in the silence. And then pay attention to the world around you. What is our Good Shepherd doing to care for you in your life, in your situation? Or how is our Good Shepherd trying to help you with the troubles of your heart? Now, perhaps the perfect solution will appear, and if that is true, thanks be to God. That would be wonderful. More often than not, Jesus cares for us as a shepherd cares for the sheep. And that means the problem is not magically solved. But we are cared for in the midst of our troubles. Jesus is with us, walking with us all the way through the valley of the shadow of death. In our psalm today, we hear, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures, leads me beside still waters, and he restores my soul." God will do all of those things for you. Period. End of the sentence. God will do these things. What is important is how we open our hearts to what God is already doing in our world. Please put your full trust and your love in God. Please bring what is really going on in your heart to our God and rely on God the way my grandparents relied on Happy. Share your joys and your sorrows with God, because Jesus says, "I am the Good Shepherd," and he means it. I truly believe in the bottom of my heart that Jesus is our Good Shepherd. And when he says that he is our Good Shepherd, Jesus will care for each of us, each one of us sheep by name. Thanks be to God for that, indeed. Amen.